It has been a long time coming. No, really, I have been working on this video for over a month, and I am finally ready to talk to you all about the 20 nominees and the Goodreads Choice Awards in the category of Romantasy. Now, I thought about doing this video last year, the first year that Romantasy was a category in the Goodreads Choice Awards, but frankly, I was overwhelmed with the nominees and a little uninterested in a lot of them. So instead, last year, I ended up reading 5 of the 20 nominees, and I endeavored to figure out what is Romantasy. Now, I don't think that video helped me get any closer to an answer, though I don't know that one truly exists or that it matters. But what does matter is that I'm here to read all of the nominees for the Choice Awards in 2024, kind of. You see, one of the issues that I ran into last year was that many of the nominees were like book 6 in a series, and if there's one thing I'm not going to do, it's read 6 books so that I can read one book nominated for an award, if that makes sense. So for this video, I'm going to be reading the nominees that are first books in the series, and I'm going to be reading the first book in series that are nominated. So for example, Zodiac Academy has the 9th book, the final book in a series nominated this year, and I'm not going to be reading the 9th book in that series, I'm going to be reading the first book in that series, and I will be reviewing that. So that I can hopefully tell you by the end of this video, not which book should win, because frankly, I don't care, but what books are worth your time, which is ultimately what I believe matters here. This genre is, to my untrained eye, a little bit saturated at the moment with a lot of sameness between books. Hopefully, I can point you in the direction of the books that are a little bit more unique, or at the very least, have romances that I find fun and interesting. Similar to some of my past Goodreads Choice Award videos, there's going to be a vlog section in this video. There's going to be a section of me sitting here talking to you about books that I read for the Choice Awards, and it's just going to be a hoot and a half. Before I walk you through the good, the bad, and the ugly of the nominees, I have to tell you about something that has been really good to me. Sponsor of today's video, Aura. I've said it once and I'll say it again, I am sick of spam callers. I swear every time I'm out to dinner with my husband, either he or I will get a phone call in the middle of a really nice conversation, and 99% of the time is a spam caller that interrupts us. And if that isn't annoying enough, I have been waiting on some pretty important phone calls lately, and half the time I'm unsure if I should pick up because spam callers have gotten so good that now they're using area codes that are around me. So again, I can't tell if whoever's calling me is a spam caller or if it's the important phone call that I have been waiting for. But the good news is Aura's got my back. Aura helps remove my personal information from data brokers and people search sites that can sell your information to scammers, spammers, and identity thieves. So instead of having to request websites take down your information, Aura does that hard work for you. Plus, they monitor my personal data online, like social security numbers and phone numbers, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to alert me about potential identity theft. Every adult on your Aura account, up to 5, gets 1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover eligible losses. So a total of up to 5 million in coverage, and they have other incredible features like financial fraud protection, VPN, antivirus, and password manager, with certified data security and privacy, and 24/7 US-based support. So if you have any questions or need any help, they have fraud specialists working around the clock. I get this all at one affordable price, and you can too. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches and brokers, and if you don't want to either, go to aura.com/chandler.ainsley to try 2 weeks for free. That'll be enough time for Aura to find out if your personal data has been exposed. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now let's get into the vlog portion of this video. Hello, fantasy friends, romantasy friends. This little man was trying to mess with the camera. It's like he doesn't want us to talk about cozy fantasy books together, cozy romantasy books. I need to get it right, okay? The romantasy category for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I decided to pick up the spellshop first because I had a feeling this would be the one that I was least likely to enjoy. That's not to say that there's not going to be other shitty books that come up. However, I picked this one up first because I don't really like the whole cozy trend. I love it for other people. I don't love it for me. And I tried to articulate this over on my vlog channel last week, but I'm not a huge fan of the cozy trend because I feel like it gives authors an opportunity to create really great worlds, decently interesting characters, but then nothing fucking happens. And even if you are someone who is really anxious and really likes comfort, I don't think that a low stakes book is really giving you much. And I could be wrong here. I kind of feel like the solution to like stress and anxiety when reading is maybe like rereading books that you really like because you know what's going to happen. Kind of like when we pick up our favorite television shows, right? Over and over again because we know what's going to happen. We know what the outcome is. We're not going to be surprised. Like maybe that's the solution. Maybe that is the solution. And then cozy stuff can start incorporating actual conflict and plot in their books. Anyway, the spell shop is about our main character, Keela. She is a librarian at the start of the story, and the library that she works at has a bunch of spells and magic books, I guess? Spell books, magic books. The library is being ransacked and burned down, so she decides she's going to steal all of the books and manuscripts she can and get the hell out of there. Where does she go, you might ask? She leaves the city and goes to her family's cottage. Her parents are both deceased, but they still have a cottage in a small town where Keela is going to go with her sentient plant, Cass. They are going to make a life for themselves, protecting these precious books. I guess only certain people are allowed to practice magic. I don't think Keela is one of those, but she's going to anyway, because now that she is in this little like fun town, she wants to help people. And how is she going to help people? She's going to create spells / remedies that she can give to people alongside the jam that she's selling. Because again, it's a cozy romantasy, and it wouldn't be cozy without home crafts, right? So she's, I was going to say doing shit, but that would be kind of a lie. I mean, I guess she's doing what I told you. There's no plot to this book. Like, nothing is happening. Things are coming up for sure, but there is no through line of the story. There is no character journey. There's no, okay, this is happening, and then it's leading. I don't know how many different ways I can really say that there's no fucking plot of this book, but there's no plot in this book, and that's irksome. That's bothersome to me. Maybe I'm just a contrarian. I just like things happening, okay? And selfishly, I like angst and tension, and I think a lot of romantasy readers do too. I've heard that from people who tend to stick to romantasy books over contemporaries, is that they feel like the stakes and the tension are higher in these fantasy worlds than they are in the real world, and sometimes I do agree with that. This book, though, I don't know. It doesn't have that, so what's the point? By some miracle, the spell shop did turn out, in fact, to have a little bit more plotline than I expected. Now, was that plotline something I was super into? Did I love the romantic elements in this story? No and no. But I do think that this is the kind of book that is going to work for readers. I think if you like a cozy romantasy book and you don't mind a little bit of plotline, babes, this is gonna butter your muffin, butter your biscuit, shuck your corn. I think I can begrudgingly admit that there's something here for somebody. And I can say that now because I've can I be honest with you, I've read all of the books now. I'm having to go back and film this clip later because I lost the second clip for this book. It's definitely one of the better cozy entries, I would say. Was it my favorite? Again, no. I don't care about a sentient plant. I don't find that particularly enthralling, but I can admit that there are people who this book is going to work for. So I'm gonna be nice. I think I'm going to put this into fine.
Hello friends, I'm outside of Target and I'm 50% into Apprentice to the Villain, so I thought we could talk about that one. Picked this one up because I thought this one had a better shot of me enjoying it than some of the other ones, and since I did not enjoy the spell shop, I was like, I don't want to put a bunch of shit I hate back to back for y'all. It just seems unfair, right? This one, I'm neither liking nor disliking. I'm feeling kind of middle of the road about it. I enjoyed Assistant to the Villain, which is why I assumed I would enjoy this one, and if you're unfamiliar with that book, I'll briefly kind of explain the gist, the vibe, etc., how this one differs, and if I would recommend it to you, I guess, so far. So, Assistant to the Villain is about our main character. I want to say it's Evie Sage. She mostly goes by Sage. That's what she's called by her employer, the villain. Sage is trying to maintain her job even though there are interesting work conditions. For this guy, he's kind of grumpy, and like the other people she works with, she's not a huge fan of. When you're thrown into the world, you're a little bit confused at first because it's supposed to be slightly like vaguely medieval in terms of what people are wearing, the fact that there's dragons, shit like that. I mean, obviously there were not actual dragons in medieval times. You know what I'm saying? Just that sort of like general fantasy vibe. The employment conditions that Sage is under are the office-y. I don't know. It's basically like she's working in an office. Like they have to do paperwork and shit working for this guy, right? And the villain is called the villain, the guy that she works for, because he steals shit, does other dastardly things against the king of the kingdom, who he claims is like not the best guy either, but he's kind of a Robin Hood kind of character, the villain. Let's say that. And he and Sage have this kind of relationship. It's sort of a back and forth, playful one. She's like kind of attracted to him. He's kind of attracted to her. We get both of their points of view as the story carries on. The overall vibe of the book is just really fun and really different than anything I'd read before. Is it high quality, incredible literature? I wouldn't say that. And I hate really using that as something that I say in videos. I try not to bring up the quality of the literature because, like, let's be real, the shit that I read, it's not going for literary merit. And I think that's fine. I'm not necessarily looking for that all the time, but I want to give you context, I guess, as I'm telling you about these books, right? I wouldn't say the writing is particularly beautiful. I don't think the world building is rich, but I don't think that's what this book is going for. Assistant to the Villain is very vignette-y, very short story-ish. There are little moments that happen, like little plot things, I guess you could say, that happen that make the book fun. There's not really like one huge thread that carries you through the entire story. Like there's definitely things that happen at the beginning of the book that come back up at the end of the book, but there's not like one through line, I would say. There's a lot of little things that happen that make it fun, that make it an interesting book. The second book, by comparison, doesn't have that same short story vignette-y feel. It definitely has more of a true through line and plot, and I think that's kind of where this book is losing me. It's not that it's bad, I'm just less interested in the things that are happening. There is a cliffhanger that happens at the end of the last book, which I will not spoil for you because I'm trying my best not to do that for the books that I am reviewing here that are sequels. There is a cliffhanger. We pick up right after that cliffhanger in this book. Things are resolved, sort of, and then we have a new plot that we are going to carry on with, and there haven't been those fun vignette moments. Yes, there are like little things that pop up. Yes, there are like little, I guess, I wouldn't even say B plots that come up, but it just does not have the same feel as the first book, I would say. Yes, there's still the same relationship dynamics between characters, especially this like will they won't they between the villain and Sage, but I'm not particularly impressed with the way that things are going. It's weird because there is a through line and there is a plot, but I'm also not invested in it. It's not clear enough to me what everybody's intentions are because we keep getting muddled down almost with the will they won't they relationship. And I'm like, how long can this will they won't they thing go if it's a 4-book series? That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not upset at it. I think that it's fine. I like these characters. I think they are fun. I think that if you did not enjoy the first book, there's basically no fucking way that you would enjoy this one because it's not like it is a really great fantasy novel. Yes, it's a fantasy setting, but if you're looking for really rich world building, really inventive plots and shit like that, you're not going to find this here, right? And that's okay. Not every book needs to be like this. And I think I actually appreciate that with this one, it's not trying to do that. I think a lot of Romantasy books want to be the next Sarah J. Maas or want to do something really unique with their plotline to like set them apart from other Romantasy books, really different worlds, and then the execution just doesn't really land. This book isn't trying for that, right? That's not like the point of this book. So I can appreciate it on that level, but you know, it's not it's not exactly what I wanted it to be. So I'm feeling 3-starry about this one. We'll see. I think that might be what I gave the first one. Maybe I gave it 4 stars. I'm not entirely sure, but it's pleasant enough, you know, which is weird because I think did I give the Spellshop 2 or 3 stars? I need to start writing down my ratings for these books because inevitably after rating them, I forget. I'm liking this more than the Spellshop, so I guess good on me for picking this one. The next one we're going to talk about, I'm already 50% into. I'm going to spoil that for you. That one's interesting. We have a lot to talk about. This is an interesting video. I need to go get tissues though, because I have a runny nose. I'm going to pop into Target and I'll BRB.
We have so much to talk about. 2 books, actually. Let's first talk about my final thoughts on Apprentice to the Villain. I wish that this had gone in a direction that I enjoyed. I feel like it really fell off the rails in the last 50%, and that implies, I think, that the first 50% was like cogent. I don't think that was necessarily the case. Didn't hate it by any means. I thought that characterization was at least consistent, but I feel like the addition of all of these different side characters, especially side characters that were related to main characters, felt a little gimmicky after a while. It was like, oh, so-and-so's long-lost brother appears, so-and-so's dead mom is here. Like, way too much of that happened over and over and over again. There was like a reveal that happened at the end of the book, so I was like, so the plot of this book was basically for nothing. I'm also majorly rethinking what I said about this book having a through line, a plot line compared to the last book, because that's not really the case either. Like, yes, technically there was a plot line, but we kept getting sidetracked from that plot line for little, I guess, moments between hero and heroine, and it wasn't good. I don't want to bitch about this book because, in all honesty, I don't have a lot of stakes in this game, but I have to agree and concur with a lot of the other reviewers who said they enjoyed the first book and now they're kind of uncertain if they want to continue on with the series because this book didn't feel like it moved our characters to a new place. Characterization was consistent, character development was not there. We didn't really get to see either of them grow very much. I guess, sure, there were more intimate moments between hero and heroine, but barely, obviously, because it's a 4-book series and it's a will they won't they thing, but yeah, I don't think that this was a very well crafted book. It was fine as a read. I think if you loved the first book, you'll probably enjoy this one. I recommend this series. I don't know, it's hard to say. I think the first book is worth giving a try because it is so different than any other romantasy that I've ever read. That could be good or bad depending on what you're looking for. I think if you are a classic romantasy reader and this is like your genre and you really, really like, you know, a more high fantasy thing, you're probably gonna hate this. If you want something that's a little bit funny and doesn't take itself too seriously, this could be refreshing to you. I think that what I'm seeing, you know, reading books for that Goodreads video for just the regular romance category, you see trends and you see new things coming up all the time, right? Funny dark romances, smutty cozy romances, and in this case, a more, I wouldn't call it cozy romantasy book, but yeah, kind of like more charming, slapsticky, like fun, you know, romantasy thing. So in that regard, I do like this book. I guess I do tentatively recommend it. Not necessarily the sequel, maybe the first book in the series. So I'm gonna give this book 3 stars, which is also what I gave the first book in the series. And if we're really splitting hairs here, I think maybe that one was more 4-star material, this one's more like 2-3-star material, but I'm just gonna leave them both at 3. I think that's fine. We can talk about a different book, okay? I feel like I've talked about this one for far too long. Let's talk about Games Gods Play. Games Gods Play? I feel like I always get the title of this one wrong. The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen is about Lyra and Hades. Lyra is living in a fairly modern society that still worships deities, but they don't really have a ton to do with them because obviously the deities kind of like toy with humans. They're not present amongst humans, right? They have like their own world, I guess. It's not like Olympus necessarily. I don't know what they're calling it, but they have their own kind of place that they chill. And it's not just Greek gods. They're gods from all different cultures that people of other cultures worship, I guess. But whatever society Lyra's in, they worship, you know, the Greek pantheon of the gods. And at the start of the story, we find out that there is this sort of like game, I guess, that the gods play every once in a while that involves human participants as champions, right? So the gods come down to Earth, they find a champion, they bring them back to, you know, wherever the fuck they're chilling, and they make them go through a series of competitions. It's not Hunger Games style, it's not dystopian, we're not like fighting to the death to win this competition, but whichever god ends up winning gets to be, I guess, god of all gods, kind of like Zeus-ish. And Hades has never entered this competition before, but he's going to enter this competition and enter our main character, Lyra. Lyra is like down to participate because she has a curse put on her by Zeus from birth that means that no one will ever love her. Like, this is her curse. Like, no one's ever gonna love her. Her parents don't give a shit about her. She doesn't know where her parents are. She has been, I guess, trained as a thief. No one really cares about her in that profession either. She decides she's going to enter this competition. Hades like chooses her specifically, and she could opt out, but she's like, you know what, fuck it, let's do this. Hopefully Zeus can take this curse off of me if I enter into this competition. Hades wants her to do a good job, and he sees something in her. There are definitely competitions happening on page. That is definitely something that happens, but this is really just a, not to, you know, steal from a Goodreads reviewer. I'll actually link to their Goodreads review if I can remember. They very aptly said that this gives like your name, self-insert, fanfiction-y vibes written by someone who just like wants to fuck Hades. That's kind of what this is. Hades isn't supposed to care for Lyra, but he does. He's like very protective of her. I don't want to say it's like Edward Cullen, but like kind of. He's like, who hurt you? Let me kiss it better. Like, but also like he's not trying to get sexually involved with her, but like he can't help his attraction to her, and she's attracted to him. He's also attracted to like some thief guy that she knew growing up and like brought her, I guess, some like tools to use during this competition. And she's like, wait, does he secretly have feelings for me? And then Hades is like, oh, who's that guy? Like, why did he come to my house? I like you, but I'm not going to tell you that. Is this really like setting the tone in the picture for you? Are you understanding what I'm throwing down? Maybe not. I'm not doing a great job at describing it, but this is a very bare bones fantasy world. We've just got this like magical competition. The competition scenes are fine. We've got Lyra making alliances with some of the other competitors, and we're starting to maybe kind of understand the dynamics between the gods, but it's not the most unique. I think I'm kind of like on Hades and Persephone retellings. Granted, in this lore, Persephone's dead, so you know, at least Lyra isn't like a stand-in for Persephone necessarily, but she wants to fuck the bad guy. I guess there's like an appeal to that like Romantasy readers are into. It's fine. It's a fine book. It's really fucking long though. This audiobook is taking me a long ass time to get through. I listen at 3 times speed, okay? I'm gonna say it. I do. I can understand that. And if you question that, maybe ask yourself the question, why in the comments are there people asking if my videos are sped up, right? I talk fast, I listen to things fast. I still have 3 fucking hours left of this, so that's a lot. That's a lot of hours of an audiobook at 3 times speed. Maybe I'll do a better job describing this when I'm finished with it. Probably not. I mean, there's not much to explain, right? It's fine. It's fine. And you know, maybe I do want them to fuck. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. Okay, besties, I'm here to talk books. I have been taking a bit of a hiatus from this video, transparently, so I feel like my update, like my final 50% update for the games Gods Play, it's not going to be as robust as it would be otherwise, but I can definitely give you the gist of how I felt about this book and if I would recommend this one. So, the ending of this book, like the last 50% of this book, are definitely very heavy on the games. I would say that the majority of this book is a very games-heavy thing. I think that if you don't like that, if that is not something that you care to read about, I think this book is probably not going to be for you. However, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like the games were executed and carried out in a way that was pretty fun. I feel like I was unsure at the beginning, or like not totally sold on the games. I was like, feels redundant, repetitive. Felt like a copy, I guess you could say, of some other things that I had read. I'm not saying that that really resolves itself, but I learned to enjoy where this book was going, and I learned to enjoy the character dynamics between Hades and the heroine's name is in this book. That being said, the ending of this book is very much giving ACOTAR. Like, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but there were some sort of unexpected things that ended up happening, and we do get sort of a resolution, kind of, with our hero and heroine and their relationship dynamic. It's sort of like not a confession of love per se, but yeah, definitely you get to see them kind of have a little bit of a resolution to their relationship, though we know new things are going to be happening in the rest of the books in the series. And you know what? I enjoyed this book. I thought it was fun. I think of the books that I've read, read so far. This might be my favorite. Like, I think that it was fairly well done, and I think that the majority of the reviews that I have seen for this book are not very favorable, which surprises me compared to some of the other things that I've read, like the fucking spell shop. Y'all, that one was not it for me, right? Different strokes for different folks, for sure. Like, I understand I'm not the target audience for that book, but one I thought was fun. I don't know that I would rush to pick up the sequel. I probably won't, admittedly, but reading it for this video was not much of a sacrifice. Like, it was fine to listen to, and yeah, I had a decent time with it. A book that I'm uncertain of is the one that I just started, and that book is called A Court So Cruel and Lovely. It is not technically nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award. I want to say like the second or third book in the series is, but of course I am not going to read all of the books in the series to get to the one that is nominated. I'm just here to tell you what series I think are worth picking up and like are fun. This book is about our main character, Priska, and in the society that she occupies, the society she lives in, people are born with magical abilities that they immediately give up upon birth. These powers, these abilities are given up to not the gods, but to the kingdom. Anyone who retains their power is considered to be corrupt. There's also some sort of ceremony that happens when they're 20 where I think they might be like given a little bit of their power back or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they are checked at 20 to like see if they still have any magical ability and then they're executed or something crazy. But regardless, if you have any sort of magical ability, bad in this world. And of course, Priska has some sort of magical abilities that she has been hiding for the majority of her life. And whenever she ends up trying to save a friend who is at risk, I believe, being sexually assaulted, her powers and her abilities come out and she has to leave the village that she has grown up in to seek refuge and to kind of figure out a new life for herself. And along the way, she ends up meeting a band of mercenaries, one of which she was like seeing in her dreams. He has volunteered to help her figure out her abilities. In exchange, she will use her abilities to help the mercenaries get into the city unseen. She has like the ability to stop time basically, but she doesn't really know how to control it or to help other people with it. He is going to teach her how to do this. And along the way, Priska has been learning more about the society that she lives in and why people are forced to give their powers away, how this is not something that is actually good for society, which she kind of suspected but didn't really understand fully until it was explained to her by the people around her, you know, people she's meeting, and also people that she has known her entire life who's just been like keeping secrets from her. So that is kind of the vibe of the book. Priska, at this point in the story, at this 50% mark, is no longer traveling. She is going to kind of act as a spy in the king's palace, and the king is obviously one of the corrupt people who has been using this magic for himself and for the people around him rather than letting them retain their power and be able to like use this to sustain themselves. Obviously, it's a typical fantasy romance where you've got kind of a poor society and poor people who are poor simply because the king just like doesn't care for them. And so, you know, Priska, she is trying to free a friend actually who is imprisoned by the king and also maybe take the king down. I don't know if we've gotten that far, but I'm assuming that's probably what she's going to end up doing. And, you know, so far so good. I have to say, I am enjoying Priska's character. I think that she is one of the, I don't want to say least annoying heroines I've read in a while, but definitely not up there with some of the more annoying, so I do appreciate that. The only thing that I'm not loving about the story is the romance. I do think that the idea of giving up your powers and a corrupt society, like that sort of thing kind of appeals to me from a reader perspective. Like, I like that kind of setup for a fantasy story, and also, you know, finding out more about your society as time goes on, because I feel like that's something that happens to us, right? Like, you're a kid, you're so idealistic and you don't really know much about the world you're growing up in until you are a little bit older, and yeah, it just feels a little bit more relatable than some fantasy setups. But the romance in this book I'm not totally sold on. Of course, Priska is into one of the mercenaries and he is into her. They've had a kind of steamy, passionate kiss upon, I guess, leaving each other. They were traveling for a while again. Mercenaries were trying to get into the city, and once Priska has essentially done her job and the mercenaries are, you know, gone, or she's going to reunite with this man at some point, but we haven't really gotten to that point yet. So far I am intrigued, tentatively. I don't know that this is going to be upper echelon for me. It's certainly one of the less annoying books. Like, this is giving 3-star vibes. I think it could maybe redeem itself if the hero becomes perhaps a little bit less annoying. I find his personality a little off-putting. He kind of abandons our heroine at one point. She comes across him in specific whenever she is escaping for the first time, like from her village. I don't know what exactly he does. Basically leaves her. He like abandons her and is like, hey, hey, good luck on your own. Don't die. And he doesn't give her any rations or any food. He doesn't do anything to help her. And he just kind of has like a dickish attitude for the majority of the book so far. Like, they definitely both have an attraction for each other, but I don't really like these kinds of setups. I'm not huge into Grumpy Sunshine, especially in these contexts. Like, if they had a reason to be enemies, okay. okay, but they don't, and she needed help, and I just don't find that appealing or sexy. Like, I don't know. That's my own personal take. So hopefully he will redeem himself as the book carries on, but so far, about him. Intrigued enough about the story. I am hoping, again, that our heroine goes from just wanting to rescue her friend to, you know, having like a greater purpose. Hinted at, but I don't think that she has really taken on the mantle of taking down society yet, and she needs to do that so I can stay intrigued. I'm gonna finish up my makeup, and then I will come back once I'm finished with this book. I'm trying to fly through the last few books that I have to read for this here video, so you might be seeing a lot of me in the same outfit. Of course, I choose to read the 2 books back to back that have the most similar plot lines. Okay, first let's finish up talking about Court This Cruel and Lovely. I wouldn't call this book particularly lovely. It's such a bummer because when I started this one, I really thought, okay, we have a winner on our hands. Even if it's not perfect, this is going to be a good book. I wouldn't go so far as to call it good. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of the plotline because a lot of shit ends up happening at the end of this book. That would be a spoiler, but don't think it's crazy to let you know that the heroine has an identity she was not previously aware of. There is a reveal at the end of the book about her identity and also the identity of Lorien, and like the entire book just waiting to find out that he is Fae. I think that that's not crazy to say. I think that we can all kind of guess that he's going to be Fae. I mean, it's a fucking fantasy romance book, of course he is. But we also find out that our heroine has like an identity she didn't previously know about. Their identities are at war, if that makes sense. Like they don't necessarily get along once they find out their respective identities, or maybe he's kind of like already always known who she was, but she finds out who he is and some of the things that he has done, and she's not super happy about it. So it's kind of a cliffhanger ending. I'm trying to really figure out what didn't work. It really was the romance. I think at the end of the day, what didn't work about this book is the romance. I was also not super happy about the change of location midway through the book. I didn't really care about infiltrating the king's palace and finding a way to escape, freeing our friends from the dungeons. Like, just wasn't that thrilling. The worst part is that the book that I'm reading right now is literally, it's got that same fucking plot line. I'm so bored. Anyway, this one will generously give 3 stars, but I think that if you're looking for a really fun romantasy and you're looking to really enjoy the hero of the book, I don't think that this is really gonna like the spot for you unless you really like a grumpy sunshine. You don't care if he has no personality trait other than grumpy. Like, maybe this will be for you. It seems like a lot of people enjoyed this one. I am notoriously picky. It was just okay. It was fine. It was okay. A book that's not okay is The Veiled Kingdom by, is it Holly Renee? Is that this author's name? Yeah. Okay. This is bad. This is like actually not good, and I can already tell you right now this is going to be worse than the Spellshop. Here's the thing, Spellshop was not for me, right? But I could tell that it had some redeeming characteristics and some qualities that other people might enjoy. This book I don't fucking get. So it's about our main character Nira. She is the daughter of the king. The king and everybody in this kingdom has magical abilities except for Nira. So kind of like the reverse of A Court This Cruel and Lovely, where our heroine has like powers that are beyond what most people have, and no one's allowed to have magic in that kingdom. In this kingdom, you're supposed to have magic. She doesn't. Her dad hates her, and so she ends up escaping. And she has been escaped from the castle for about a year now. I think there was like a raid on the castle, and she took that opportunity to escape because there are rebel forces at play that want to take down the king and the people at the top, I guess. For what exact reason, I'm not entirely sure. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel like that's really illuminated super well in this first part of the book, but we find out that there's a rebel faction. After a series of events, our heroine is like captured essentially, or trying to steal something, and I think that she ends up like in the, I was gonna say basement, in the dungeon, right? Anyway, our hero is part of the rebel group. He is sneaking in to let his sister free. While he is there, he ends up escaping with both Nira and his sister. They're taken to this rebel compound where they have to state their allegiance. Now they're going to train to be a part of the rebellion, and that's literally all this book is our heroine learning to fight, learning to spar, even though she doesn't have any magical abilities. She is going to be just like a combat fighter, I guess, for the rebellion, for the rebel cause. The fantasy elements of this book are so paper thin. Like, I wouldn't say the fantasy elements of most of these books are remarkable or super unique or like Brandon Sanderson level Cosmere fucking craziness. I don't expect that from a romantasy book. It's not to say that I think that all romantasy is bad in the world building, okay? I'm not saying that at all. The majority of the ones that I have read have not been groundbreaking, and that's okay. That being said, I'm going to need actual fantasy elements in your book. I think the appeal, and I could be wrong here, but I think the appeal for most romantasy readers is that they want more going on than just the romance. They want there to be high stakes and tension around the couple, fun things happening outside of the romance. No, that doesn't happen here. Our heroine is literally just sparring and learning to fight with the hero of the story, and he is a fucking asshole. He's not fun, he's not pleasant. If Lorien from the last book was kind of a wet blanket. This guy, I don't even know what I would call him. A shot of Malort. Like, he is just not it. I don't enjoy him. I think our heroine is boring as fuck and has no personality. It's crazy the way that we're introduced to this book too. Like, gave y'all the setup. She doesn't have magical abilities and she escapes from the palace and all these things. All of that happens in like the first chapter of this book. We're just given this information because I think our author is trying to be like, hey, let's get this shit out of the way so we can get to the fucking, okay? And we haven't actually fucked yet, but the first time they spar, she's like, I can feel his dick print. Disappointed, but not surprised. I knew that we were gonna have to have like a couple of books like this in here, and I'm glad that this one's not that long. It's one of the shorter audiobooks that I'm listening to, so, you know, that's nice. But as I near the end of the list of books that I need to read, I'm disappointed. Not surprised, but disappointed. I wanted to find like a gem. I do not relish bitching about books. I know it sounds crazy. I try to make it fun. I don't like bitching about books. I really do like finding good ones, and I love being able to bring you good books. Like, I don't know if you've checked, but the description of my channel is reading books to tell you what's good, and I would love if every book that I picked up was good. I don't know why I'm going on this rampage. I just feel like this video has felt very negative so far. I don't know what to say. It's just not it. It's just not it. Did the Veiled Kingdom get any better? I wish that I could say that it did. Unfortunately, it did not. I am still like a little bit mind boggled at this book. I don't want to ask how it got published because I'm pretty sure that this was not traditionally published and is in fact indie published. And you can publish anything if you're an independent author, you know? Like, if you just want to publish whatever you want, you can. And I don't mean that in a bitchy way. I think that a lot of the joy of being a self-published or indie published author is getting to publish things that maybe would not get published otherwise. In this case, I just feel like there was so much lacking from the world building that I'm surprised that this is a fantasy romance. Like, I don't really feel that there was any real work put into the fantasy elements. I was hoping it would maybe improve near the end of the book, and I guess you could say in some ways it sort of did. Like, we do have a little bit of a setup for the second book in the series, but I was not impressed with like the reveals that happened. I didn't really like the relationship between hero and heroine. I really like him. He is fucking precious. I don't really like subservience in my stories. I don't know what better way to say it, but the heroine in this book has this moment with the hero where she's getting a little horned up, if you will, and he essentially asks her to beg him to fuck her, and it wasn't hot. It was off-putting and a little disturbing at times, if I'm being 100% honest. I was kind of getting the ick. I will say I warmed up to it a little bit once the freakin' started, if you will, and this is probably, I don't want to say one of the only times, but one of the only times in a while where I have read a book and been like, okay, I sort of like hate it. I sort of really don't enjoy what's going on here. I'm intrigued by the sex scene. Kind of. Like, I think they were well written. Let's put it that way. I think they were well written. But again, the fantasy elements were so missing here. And I think that if you are a Romantasy reader and you're really in it for like the smut, I think that maybe this will work for you. But I think if you're a Romantasy reader who really does need that balance, like, this is not for you. Like, you're not going to vibe with this book. I mean, I say that. There's probably some of you out there who are like, no, Chandler, like, I love good Romantasy story and this one really fits the bill. But I'm just calling it as someone who does not read Romantasy that this had basically no fantasy elements. So that's where I'm leaving it, okay? Let's talk about a book I just started, not really, I'm 50% into it. Final book that I will be vlogging. I'm actually impressed with it. I didn't think that I would find a book that I would be impressed with. Trial of the Sun Queen. I knew nothing about this book going into this video. I feel that way about most of the books. I don't know if I have like said that any of the other books, but I knew literally nothing about this book going into it. But I picked it up, honestly, just a little bit dejected. Frankly, this video has taken a lot out of me. I have been sick a couple of times in the midst of filming this. I'm gonna be frank with you. I've been ready for it to be finished. This is actually fun though, so shout out to this author for that. This book's about our main character, Lore, and she is, I was gonna say thief. She's definitely not a thief, but it's kind of given, you know, Miss Selena Sardothian vibes. Main character, Lore, she is imprisoned at the start of the story with her brother and her sister. They have been imprisoned for as long as they can remember, and our heroine is just really trying to make it. I think the first sentence of this book says something like, "Bitch took my soap." So we're instantly drawn into this world where our heroine is in a really desolate place, a really bad situation, and not, again, to compare it to like Throne of Glass, but I mean, this is pretty comparable to Throne of Glass, so I will be making some comparisons. Compared to Throne of Glass, I felt more for this heroine immediately than I did for Selena, because the way that this author writes, I think, is very succinct and to the point, but it also gets you to be immersed and care instantly about this character. You realize like how rough her situation is in life, that she's had to do to survive in these really shitty conditions. She's been in prison for a while, there's no hope of her escaping, and she ends up getting into a fight with one of her fellow prisoners at the start of the story, is put into this hole called the Hollow, I want to say. It's literally just like a hole in the dirt outside of the prison where she's going to be in solitary confinement for 2 weeks. And you get to see how horrible those conditions are until, of course, one day she is rescued, I guess you could say. Kind of unbeknownst to her, she is taken to a foreign kingdom and she is being entered into a competition. And she is kind of thrown for a loop because she doesn't really know what this place is. I mean, she does to an extent, like she's heard of this kingdom before. She has no idea about their culture, their king, really anything, because again, she's been imprisoned her entire life. So she has been brought from the Aurora kingdom, which is like dark all of the time, just has like the Aurora Borealis nighttime to kind of differentiate day from night. She's taken from the Aurora to, I can't remember the name of the other kingdom that she is taken to, but it is the Sunny kingdom that is really beautiful. And she is going to be one of 10 women vying for a spot as the queen to the Sun King. Again, all of the Sun Queens, like who's going to become the Sun Queen. And the other contestants have been kind of training for this their whole lives. It's usually rich women from the kingdom who get to vie for the attentions of the king, but there's always one person, like a final person, a 10th person, a woman in specific, I guess, who is put into this competition as, I guess, a reminder to the people that you can rise from shitty circumstances to become great. The other women that are competing are high fae, and I believe our heroine is just a human. But if she does become the queen after this like trial or these competitions that are going to take place, she could, you know, potentially become fae. Is initially like not really interested in this or interested in the competitions. She is like pretty pissed that she is not actually back home with her brother and her sister. Through a little bit of sleuthing and or just like talking to the king, they have a bit of a one-on-one dinner together. She learns that the only way that she could potentially get her brother and sister out of prison is if she ends up like married to him and she's like a queen and she can, you know, help get them out of prison. And additionally, we have another point of view in the story to kind of spice things up. So the king of the other country, the king of the country that our heroine is from, the Aurora kingdom, he has a son. His son is, I think, not the greatest fan of him. He does not like how the country is run. He is, I think, looking for a way to take his father down, or he has been tasked with finding out what happened to this escaped prisoner. I guess there is technically an agreement between the Sun Kingdom and the Aurora Kingdom where they kind of like, I don't want to say swap people. I don't need to get into the weeds and the details, but essentially they didn't know that this prisoner was taken and we're kind of being led to believe that the prisoner that was taken, you know, our heroine, has something special about her. Like, why is she being watched over? Why is the king asking his son to kind of investigate what has happened? And he's wondering if this could be the key to taking down his dad, if that makes sense. I feel like I kind of butchered that last part of it, but trust me, I know what's going on and I'm intrigued by this. I like it, honestly. I am intrigued by the plotline of this book. I think the writing is solid, maybe not remarkable, but is solid. I'm a little less than impressed with the competition element of this story. I actually just read the first kind of competition trial, whatever, and I feel like it was a little bit lackluster and a little bit predictable in the sense of like the outcome. But that being said, I am into these characters. I'm into this plotline. It already feels a little bit more like interesting to me again than like Throne of Glass. And I like Throne of Glass. I think that series is like pretty fun. Arguably Sarah J. Maas's best series, although I do like ACOTAR. I will be honest with you, I do like ACOTAR. This is just fun. And the reviews that I have read online of this, because I just put this on my currently reading shelf on Goodreads, are pretty middling. It doesn't seem like very many people like really fucked with this. This is far and away better than the majority of the things that I have been reading for this video. Maybe it is just like trial books in general. Though I will say, you know, I did read, what is it, Games Gods Play pretty recently. This one, I think a little bit more intriguing to me. I think there's like a little bit more politics and intrigue at play here than there is in that book. So I think that this is maybe a better bet. I feel like, depending obviously on what happens with this one, I might actually be intrigued to read more books in the series. And I can honestly say I don't really feel that way about the other books that I have read for this video. I hope I'm not contradicting myself. I'm not editing this video as I go, and I have been filming this video for over a month at this point, so maybe there's another book that I've said that about, but I don't think so. I'm gonna be real with you, I don't think so. This one's fun, and I am going to finish my makeup, and I'm gonna finish this book, and I'm gonna finish vlogging. Can I be honest? I really enjoyed this. I think that this might be, dare I say, fantastic. I kind of struggle with this one. I couldn't decide if this was going to be like more in the 4-star or 5-star category for me. And I guess to be transparent, there's another book later on in this video that is definitely fantastic and I didn't give 5 stars to. So regardless, you know what? I think I'm gonna put this in the fantastic category. This was so much fun and it wasn't the most inventive thing ever. This is not a book that is going to blow your mind, but if you're someone who likes a tight plot, you enjoy competition style books, and you want a romantasy that kind of leaves you guessing, I think think this is a lot of fun. When it comes to the actual romance elements of this book, I think this might be a little lacking for some people. Like, there's definitely multiple different men in this book who are contending for Lore's affections, kind of. Like, we definitely have Atlas, the Sun King, who is very much interested in Lore and at times kind of wants her to win this competition. We've also got Gabriel, who is the guard, the angelic fae guard of, I say angelic, he has white wings, but he is the guard of Lore, and he acts sometimes annoyed with her, sometimes interested in her, and so we're not really sure what his true intentions are. He works for Atlas, but like, he's not totally into all of the orders that he's given by Atlas. They're sometimes at war. It's kind of giving like Dorian and Kale vibes, though Gabriel I think is much cooler than Kale. And then you also have Nadir, I believe is his name, the other kingdom, the Aurora Kingdom. He doesn't come in that often in the story. I do like the inclusion of his point of view, but it's not something that is overbearing. He's just trying to solve the mystery of who the escaped prisoner, aka Lore, is, and I think he kind of figures it out at the end of the book. Maybe, actually I'm not entirely sure if he figures it out, but he does have some contact with our heroine in a big way at the end of the story, and now our heroine is in a situation where she's trying to kind of like figure out her next moves. I don't want to spoil this book because I do think the ending is pretty fun. I wouldn't say that it's something that you won't see coming. Like, there's so many elements of this book that I found predictable, but not in a way that I was upset with. It felt like the natural progression of different storylines, again, with her relationship with Atlas and with Gabriel and with, I guess, Nadir kind of a little bit, because that does happen a little bit at the end of the book. Yeah, I'm very excited to see where the series goes, and of all of the books that I'm reading, this definitely is the series that I am most interested in continuing on with. So I liked this. I really, really liked this, and this surprised me. This was, I don't want to say the book I was least interested in picking up, but I mean, I put it off till the end, so I guess that says something, that maybe don't judge a book by its cover or judge a book by its synopsis. Like, the synopsis didn't really excite me, but I liked this. I genuinely enjoyed this, and I feel like I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I'm also supremely out of the loop when it comes to Romantasy, so there's that. Speaking of being out of the loop in Romantasy, actually it has nothing to do with being out of the loop in Romantasy. I ended up DNFing Blood of Hercules pretty early on. That book was simply not good. I'm gonna have to put that book in opposite of favorite. It's about our heroine who is kind of living in a slum-y situation, and she finds out that she is secretly Hercules, and I can't really define what about this didn't work for me. I think you have to pick up this book or this audiobook for yourself, but I think it's supposed to be kind of funny and satirical and playful, and I found it corny and cringy. And the Goodreads reviews for this book are in fact scathing, and I don't think we can put all of our faith into Goodreads reviews, because there are definitely books for this video that have 4+ stars that I don't like. There's definitely books like this that are under 4 stars average rating that I did really enjoy. So, you know, that's not to say that Goodreads reviews are everything, but this book, not for me, not a favorite. Let me kick it back to Chan of the Chair. First up, we have I Promise of Peridot, which is the second book in the Sacred Stones series by Kate Golden. Now, it's pretty rare, even with the volume of books that I read, or the memory of one that I read, to just completely fall out of my head. Sometimes I do forget character names or like the finer details of plot points, but it is really uncommon for me to completely forget having read a book. But that's what happened when I ended up reading A Dawn of Onyx earlier this year. I will say, when I did read the synopsis of this book, it sort of jogged my memory a little bit, so let me try to break down what this book is about. Basically, there are kingdoms based on gemstones, and I believe that the kingdom of gemstones that you particularly live in impacts what magic abilities you have. In the first book, our heroine lives in, I don't even remember, to be honest, what kingdom is it, like amber or something? It's something orangey, okay? Our heroine Arwen has some sort of like magical healing abilities, and she decides that she is going to volunteer to be taken prisoner in the Onyx Kingdom. I guess the Onyx Kingdom is the one that is starting a bunch of wars kind of amongst the different gemstone kingdoms, and the Onyx King is kind of a bad guy, and that's what we're led to believe, at least. And so Arwen's gonna go and help heal his soldiers during this war, even though she doesn't want to, and she's been told he's like a really bad guy. What happens next is anyone's guess, because I honestly cannot remember. And you might say that I should have reread this book, to which I'd say no. I feel that memorability is important when it comes to books, especially in a subgenre where books can kind of tend to run together. That can definitely be said of any genre, by the way, not just Romantasy. But typically, once a genre is really in its heyday, the books kind of feel the same because they're all trying to replicate the popularity of bestsellers. Think Twilight and all of the paranormal and like vampire romances that came out around the same time. From what I remember, the writing of this book wasn't bad. Maybe this will strike your fancy, but for me, it was just ultimately forgettable. To repeat a thread that I saw recently, I think books should be gayer, and that sort of sums up my issue with A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. This one is a standalone, sapphic, semi-dark academia book. We've got Lorelai, who is attending this magical university. She is a folklorist, I believe, and she is vying for a spot on a special expedition with one of her favorite professors. She's vying for a spot against this other girl, her kind of like rival, who is kind of beloved by everyone. She's very manic pixie dream girl, la la. Her name's Sylvia, okay? And clearly the relationship is going to be between Lorelai and Sylvia, who both wind up on this expedition. And the expedition kind of goes awry early on. People start winding up dead, and we find out that the expedition is a little bit more complicated than they have been led to believe previously. Like, there's some fuck shit going on, for lack of a better word. On paper, I feel like I should have liked this, right? I do like a rivals to lovers, dark academic thing. I kind of feel like this book just did a little bit too much though, and I didn't totally gel with the writing. This is the second book by this author that I have tried in 2024, and I just didn't really vibe with either of them. So I don't necessarily think that's the author's fault. I just think it's my fault for not really loving their writing. Again, when it comes to the romance, I wanted more from it. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a good Darcy hand flex, but this is a standalone fantasy romance or romantasy book, and I feel like the romance was underdeveloped. Like, this whole story really should have been like laying the groundwork for the romance, and I feel like it was not the perfect mix of fantasy and romance. I don't know, that's just me. That being said, this isn't a bad book, and it's one that I can definitely see the appeal in, especially for a certain type of reader. It just wasn't to my personal taste, so instead of not a fave, I'm gonna go ahead and put this in if fine. Next up, we have Gold by Raven Kennedy, which I did not read. I did, however, read Gild and Glint though, so I do have opinions on this series. Gild is about a completely gold gal named Oren who is protected, aka imprisoned, by King Midas. He supposedly rescues Oren from a pretty shitty situation. She kind of grew up on the streets. Now that she has been saved by King Midas, she feels like she kind of owes him a debt and is willing to overlook the things that he does. He is married to someone else. He sleeps with multiple women, oftentimes in front of Oren. Should maybe be disgusted at this, but she again just feels kind of grateful at the attention that he is showing her. And because she is gold touched, because she is completely gold, she is a prize for him to kind of show off. Things in the first book get a little bit interesting though, as King Midas starts to kind of pull back from Oren and she's having to face some of her kind of jealous feelings. Things also get a little complicated as neighboring kingdoms are starting to go to war, and King Midas is having to decide whether he is going to do that as well, which of course shakes up Oren's life. Now, I read Gild for the first time back in 2021. It was definitely different than anything I had ever read, but not always in a good way. I was really alarmed at the amount of on-page sexual violence. I was uncertain on how to read both Oren's and King Midas's characters. Like, it was very clear to me that she felt like she owed him something, and it was clear that he was a bad guy and was being portrayed that way, but I wasn't really convinced that this book and this series were going to try and tackle grooming and emotional manipulation, which I think are important things when it comes to these sorts of discussions. Now, the second time around reading this book and then immediately going into the second book did feel like I got a better feel for the answer at what this book was trying to do. And when reading the second book, I did again kind of understand that better. These books are definitely fantasy in the sense that the world does grow over time and we do learn more about the politics of this world, but ultimately these books really are about Oren and her journey on gaining agency and escaping abuse. And I do think that's a very powerful message, though I will say at times I'm not sure that I agree with how the author necessarily portrays this. Again, I think there's perhaps too much on-page abuse, and I'm not sure that I need to see repeated portrayals of that. Now, as a series, I think that the second book was entertaining and it did kind of carry on the plotline from the first book in a interesting way, though I have heard from some readers that this series kind of falls off as the books continue. Like, the series is just a little bit longer than it needs to be. It's a series that I didn't hate, but I'm not sure if I would outright recommend. I think that reading the first book will give you a good feel for whether or not you are interested enough in the world and in Oren's journey to carry on, though again, I would definitely tread lightly because this book does have pretty graphic on-page depictions of abuse. Feels weird to categorize this book as fun, but I did enjoy this book quite a bit more than others on the list, and it does feel more original. Okay, I feel like I've talked about Phantasma a lot, though I think in totality it's been twice. Maybe I'm just sick of hearing about it. Necromancer Girl's dumb little sister decides to enter into a deadly competition to win money to save their house because their mom just died. The Necromancer Girl ends up following her sister and having to enter the deadly competition for herself, meeting a very forward ghost man who she does in fact fuck and fall in love with pretty quickly. I love a good deadly game situation. That's something I am finding this book and the games gods play. However, I'm not really into the Caraval-esque fuckery of it all. I think that's just a personal preference thing. In fact, I know that's a personal preference thing. In fact, all of the things that I'm talking about in this video are personal preference things. If you aren't super picky about your romances, you don't mind a guy who's like kind of got weird vibes and like kind of professes his love too quickly and shit like that, and you like the vibes of Caraval, I think you're gonna be foaming at the mouth and the panties for this one, okay? It was fine. I DNF'd a darling. I'm sorry, but actually I'm absolutely not sorry. When the Moon Hatched was just not for me, and I'm thrilled that it seems to be for so many people. But tell me why I had such a challenging time trying to understand this book. I'm not asking to be spoon-fed things. In a fantasy novel though, you can't throw me to the wolves and expect me to understand what the fuck is going on. I had to reread the little like introductory lore pages like 3 times to get some grasp, some semblance of what the fuck was going on, and I still had to go back to that section as I was reading the book because I was like, wait, am I misunderstanding something? You're telling me dragons are moons and they're falling from the sky. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, frankly. This isn't my preferred genre, right? So maybe I am a little unpracticed in keeping world building in the old noggin, but Jesus Christ, I didn't understand this book. The writing was also a little bit much for me personally. It was wordy in a way that I don't think added to the storytelling. It was the opposite of a favorite. This will be a short one, A Touch of Chaos, the Hades and as Hades X Persephone series by Scarlett St. Clair. I DNF'd the first book and I just frankly never looked back. I have personally grown weary of Hades and Persephone retellings. They're a dime a dozen, and this modern retelling just did not excite me when I tried to pick it up. I want to say I tried to pick this up a couple of times before finally just admitting defeat. How it turned into a multi-book series, that I am curious about, but not curious enough to again try to pick it up, so this was forgettable. The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields is a standalone novel about a girl who does not want to get married to men, which, fair enough. She instead moves in with her grandmother so she can be taught witchy things. Her grandmother also lets her know that if she wants to take over the witchy stuff from her when her grandma dies, that she is going to have to give up all hope of love, right? Like these honey witches, these witches in this particular family have a family curse to, again, never really be in love. Marigold's okay with this because, again, now she doesn't have to marry a man and she gets to learn witchy shit. How cool! Until a magic skeptic named Lottie rolls up looking fine as hell and Marigold is like, I need to prove that magic exists to this girl. Also, that the head game is fire. This book was fine for me. I wasn't really sure what the vibe we were going for was because the cover and parts of the story did feel cozy, but there was a lot at the same time that was not cozy, that felt incongruous, I guess. Like if I'm picking up a story that's supposed to be cozy, which I don't typically do because I don't care for cozy, and there's elements that are a little bit stressful, it just doesn't feel totally harmonious, I feel. Also a little hung up on the sex scenes here. Every time I think about this book, the thing I think about is the sex scenes. Marigold kind of like convulses when there is some sort of like intimacy going on and not in like a big O sort of way. I'm not supposed to be intimate because of my curse sort of way, and she's like cured with honey. I don't know. It was odd, but fine. Zodiac Academy, Restless Stars by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. Now, Zodiac Academy, I feel like, is a name I haven't heard in years. These books have been coming out for what feels like forever, and I'm pleased to say that this book is the last one in the series, though I've only read the first book in the series, and that's the one I'm going to be speaking to you about. I have always been tempted to read these books, frankly. I have wanted to read the entire series because what I've heard is that they are sort of potato chippy. I feel like I also read somewhere that these are the Sharknado of fantasy romance, and there's just something about books that don't take themselves too seriously that I do appreciate. Anyway, these books are set in a magical school. You guessed it, some zodiac elements, along with a whole plethora of magical creatures and not so magical bullying. We've got these 2 twin girls who have been growing up in the human world until they find out, I believe, that they are princesses who just like have been lost this entire time, and so they're gonna go to the Zodiac Academy, learn more about their abilities, and also get like bullied by people who like don't want these princesses to come back. I think they also get seduced, you know, in the meantime. There's definitely fucking that happens. And I know I have said it already, but these books are in fact deeply unserious. The first one I gave 3 stars because I actually did have a fun time with it despite it being totally ridiculous. I think these are the kind of books that if you're into this sort of thing, you've probably already read or you are interested in reading. And if you're not, just steer clear. This book was fine. Now, y'all have every right to clown on me because A Fate Inked in Blood is arguably better than Zodiac Academy. Better written, better fantasy, better characters, question mark. But I did enjoy this book. Cool premise, really not great execution in my eyes because we've got Freya, who's married to a loser at the beginning of the story. He kind of like steals all the fish from everybody else in the village. Like he's got magical fishing abilities, and so he steals all the fish, which is like very uncool. Anyway, Freya is super hot and beautiful. She gets discovered as she is like out back by the crick. She's discovered by a hottie and his dad. Dad is like, oh shit, I could marry you. You are a shield maiden and I'm trying to conquer and become king. We could use your magical abilities, so divorce your husband, marry me. And she doesn't really want to, but it's better than her current situation, so she decides she's going to do this. But these are made complicated because of course she's not really that interested in daddy. I regret saying that. Interested in the hottie that she runs into first. There's this kind of constant will they won't they, because I'm pretty sure the guy that she marries is like, you can't fuck my son, that would like not be cool. And so it's like forbidden. It doesn't really feel forbidden, and of course she fucks the hot guy guy. I don't know, I just don't understand how this romance can carry on into a second book and make me care. Like, there's no angst and tension there. And I didn't really care about the fantasy elements either, so this was, in fact, the opposite of a favorite. Wait, confession time? I actually read A Shadow in the Ember, the first book in whatever the fuck series this is, for this video, but I was sick and I didn't actually get to vlog my experience, which I am regretful about, because this is actually one of the better books on this list, and I have to say I am kind of shocked by that. I thought this was going to be extremely similar to the book with that bitch Poopy. Yes, my autocorrect when I was typing up my notes in my notes app on my computer autocorrected Poppy to Poopy, and I'm gonna stick with that. Anyway, I thought this book was different enough because Sarah and Poppy are not actually similar, and Sarah didn't piss me off. So stay with me. Our main character, Sarah, is I think actually a princess, but she has been promised since birth to the god of death as his consort, right? So Sarah's kingdom ended up making a deal with the devil, basically a deal with the god of death, that their kingdom would be saved from this like magical curse, and that part of that bargain would be, you know, Sarah's gonna go fuck this guy when she's of age, of course. She becomes of age, and she's been trained for years, you know, to be his consort, but he comes on her birthday and he's like, yeah, I'm good. I don't actually need a consort. And so this is kind of tricky because, yes, she's been trained to be a consort, but she's also been trained to kill this man. So she was going to assassinate Daddy Death, but that can't happen because he doesn't want her, and we don't know where the fuck he is. What we do know, though, is that this curse on the people, or not even curse, but bargain is not really like being upheld, and there is kind of a scourge on the earth, a rot spreading over the land, if you will. People are also starting to be murdered by gods. And that's not totally uncommon, but the rate at which they are going missing, is increasing for sure. So Sarah decides that she's going to kind of try to figure out why the gods are killing people, and in doing so, she ends up meeting a guy who's also curious, so she gets to like sleuth with a hot guy. And I'm sure you can guess who the hot guy is, but I won't spoil it for you. I had fun with this book. I really did. I felt like the chemistry between hero and heroine was definitely there. Didn't hate the sex scenes in this book. I enjoyed the dynamic. Again, if you have read, what is it? Blood and Ash, or whatever the fuck, Blood and Ash, I think that's the name of the first book of the other series. Came out, what was it, 2020? It's been a while. That one, I didn't like the character dynamics. I felt like there were too many repetitive scenes between Poopy and whoever the hell she was with. He was really irritating. She was really irritating. They fought a lot and said the same things over and over again. That didn't really happen here. And the plot was, I don't know, kind of interesting to me. Crazy to say that out loud. This was fun. Know what else was fun? Faebound. I listened to the audiobook of this back in the summer while gardening, and yes, it was as charming as it sounds. This book's about Urin, who is a warrior elf. In the society, there used to be fae and humans and elves, now there's just elves, and the elves are kind of like fighting amongst themselves. Urin has just been elevated in status to like leader of one of these like bands of elves who are going to war, and on the first day of her new job, she kind of fucks up pretty big time and ends up risking the lives I think people die. Okay, I think people die. And she gets banished as a result of her failure. So Urin's kind of walking in the woods, kind of fucking around, kind of like hunting for sport, also to stay alive, because again, she's like not with her people anymore. She ends up coming across the fae, who end up kidnapping her because she ends up killing something that is very sacred to them. Kind of giving Akatar vibes, if you're picking up on what I am putting down. Also, Urin's sister and best friend have been following her this entire time. They also end up getting kidnapped by the fae. So there are 3 elves trying to navigate the court politics of the fae, who don't really like the elves because of what they have been doing to the land and the fae, I guess, without really knowing it's the fae that they've been harming. Conceptually, I adored this. I really enjoyed the fantasy world here. I loved the politics. I loved this sort of like fish out of water situation. But when it's a romantasy, the romance also needs to impress me, and I really did not like the romance here. You've got Urin's little sister and best friend getting together, which was like, eh. And then you've got Urin having this sort of like enemies to lovers relationship with a fae woman, and I wanted to like it. I like the idea of enemies to lovers, and it was pretty strong at the beginning, but the enemies fizzled way too quickly into lovers, and it just wasn't very exciting. And I don't know how you get characters together in this first book convincingly, and then try to convince me in the second book that like they shouldn't be together, or that there should be some like new tension and stakes built in. It was fun, and I am interested in the second book, but not for the romance. And I think if you're looking for a banger romance in a fantasy book, this is maybe a skip. But for me, it was fun. Now we're getting to the only fantastic book, and no, I am not talking about the Sarah J. Maas one. Quicksilver's got a pretty basic plot line. Our heroine, Saris, ends up getting caught stealing in her really shitty kingdom, and she has to face the queen, who has been responsible for this really shitty kingdom. When she faces the queen, she ends up like unlocking a gateway, Saris does, between realms. So she ends up meeting the ancient fae, this guy that kind of emerges out of the silvery pool where she's meeting the queen. And the guy who she gets from the pool is named Kingfisher, and he is kind of hot, and so is this book, I have to say. It has the same compulsive readability as Akatar, with better characters than Fourth Wing. I think that this is the kind of fantasy romance that I can get on board board with. It's not like the most incredibly inventive plot, like I said, but I don't care because I just had so much fun with this. The only complaint that I really have about this book, and this is something that I want to revisit, I want to maybe reread this book and see if it bothers me as much the second time around. The only thing that I wish is that the tension had lasted a little bit longer between hero and heroine, again, as this is like a multi-book series, but it was still fantastic. Last and least, we have House of Flame and Shadows by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave 1 star, and it was in fact the opposite of a favorite. It just makes me sad, honestly, to see authors cranking out unfun stuff. This series in general was just kind of a flop for me, and I didn't expect to love this last book, but this book and the series in general, they just have too many side characters, uninteresting plot, weak romance. This book was especially bad for me because, again, it couldn't stick the landing of the series. I didn't like the first 2 books, but I was really ready and willing to be convinced that the series was better than it actually is if this last book had been good. It just wasn't, though. It kind of fell apart. I feel like this has soured my impression of the series even more than it already did. But you know, of course, I want to go to Reader's Choice Awards, so that makes sense. But that's it. Those are the 20 Romantasy Goodreads Choice Award nominees. Ordinarily, this is where I would say something really profound about the state of Romantasy and what book I think should have won the Goodreads Choice Awards. And I think if we're like going off of my rankings, we should have had Quicksilver win. And I believe that it was like pretty high up there, you know, compared to some of the other books. Though, of course, House of Flame and Shadow won by a landslide, which of course we kind of expected. As far as profound thoughts go, this is just not a subgenre that I read a whole lot from, so I don't feel like I can offer a really well-rounded view of what this subgenre is, or where it's going, or the state of Romantasy, and what I'd like to see from it going forward. You know what? I can't actually answer that last one. I would like to see more unique and original Romantasy books, and I want to find things that really push the envelope when it comes to the romance. I don't want to say that in my eyes, Romantasy is the worst of both worlds, because I really love the concept of Romantasy. I love romance and I love fantasy, but often, especially when it comes to these books, I find that the romance tends to suffer a lot of the fantasy thrown in, and that the fantasy isn't developed enough because we're focusing so much on the fucking. So I'm hoping that in the future, I can find some Romantasy books that personally work for me. I'm not willing to throw in the towel or say that this subgenre is bad. I don't believe that. I just don't think I found my perfect Romantasy books yet. I guess if you have any recommendations for me, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, and maybe let me know what your favorite Romantasy is from this list, and if it differs from mine. I'm always curious to see if I'm just missing something when I'm reading these books, but I had a fun time doing this. I may or may not do this one next year. I definitely will be doing contemporary romance, but Romantasy, I don't know, remains to be seen. Let me know if you'd like to see it, I guess. Thanks so much for watching this video, though. Love y'all so much, and I'll see you in the next one.